Welcome to another episode of the Potential Success Show. My name is Fong. I'm an entrepreneur, business strategist, real estate investor, speaker, and also best-selling author. And every single day, I help others unlock potentials and guide them to succeed. Today on the show, we have another fascinating guest. On this show, we interview celebrities, entrepreneurs, business CEOs, athletes, and artists to find out their path to success, how they're able to overcome challenges, adversity, and of course, their keys to success. And today's guest is somebody who's been helping a lot of people make sound and informed decisions on their finances. I've had the pleasure of meeting this individual many, many years ago. In fact, he was one of the first people that was introduced to me to get to know when I first got into real estate and investing and gold and silver and all that kind of stuff. And ever since then, he's been pumping out great content online. He's been adding a lot of great value. And recently, I'm like, man, how come I haven't reached out to him yet? So here he is today. I'm very, very excited to have him here. He's been focusing a lot of his time educating people on economic trends, history, and also wealth transfer so that they can make that sound and informed decision on their finances, helping people succeed personally and also professionally as well. So please welcome somebody who's an expert in gold and silver commodities. He's an investor. He's a wealth cycles expert, Mr. Dan GIERCKE.
Hey, Fong, how are you? Great to be
I'm
here.
doing well. Yourself?
I'm excellent, thanks.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much for being here. I'm very, very excited. I mean, I see you online all the time, and I'm like, oh, I need to reach out. I need to reach out. And finally, I'm like, you know what? Let's do it. Let's have him on the show, and hopefully he agrees. And right off the bat, you said yes. I'm very, very excited. So thank you very much.
Yeah, my pleasure. It's great to be here.
So you're a person who studies wealth cycles, studies wealth transfer, and all that kind of stuff. Is that something you've always had an interest in? Like, you don't come out of school and go, you know what? I want to study wealth transfer. Like, how did you get to that decision?
Yeah, no, great question. So I guess I've always been interested in investing. I can remember kind of my introduction to it. I was in junior high, I believe, and my dad came to me at the time and said, you know, you've got some money sitting in a bank account. It's not really doing much for you. There's this thing called a Canada savings bond. At the time, it was paying, if I remember correctly, about 12%, which is pretty phenomenal. I think today they're probably 1 or 2% maybe. And so I took a couple $1,000s and I bought some Canada savings bonds. And by the time I left high school to go to college, I cashed them in and I had a few $1,000s. It had grown nicely over the few years it was in there. Fast forward a few years, I finished college. My brother and I ended up buying our first piece of real estate. We bought a townhouse together for a place to live, but we also rented out a room or two for friends. So I got into real estate at 19.
Oh, wow.
Thankfully, my parents helped us out with that, which was great. They said as long as we were still owners, they'd put up the down payment for us. So first house, I still remember my mortgage payment of $372 every month. That was my half. I wish I still had that mortgage payment. Those days are long gone, unfortunately. I don't think you can buy a townhouse.
You can't transfer that mortgage over.
Yeah, I don't think you can buy a townhouse for under 90,000 anymore. But that's a product of what maybe we'll talk a little further about later on, and that's inflation and debt-based money systems. But so yeah, I bought my first piece of real estate at 19. I started putting away in RRSPs and that sort of thing at 19. Grew a bit of an ego, I think, because I thought I knew everything and was doing all the right things and listening to advisors. Fast forward a number of years, back in, I want to say 2007, I met a fellow named Brad Fisher, who I work with today. We were at an investing conference, actually, and we were sitting at a table together, and the assignment was putting together a creative real estate deal. And we were both talking similar concepts, and I thought, you know, this guy's pretty sharp. I need to keep in touch with him and learn more about what he knows. And so we did. We kept in touch over the next year. And summer of 2008, he was one of actually 3 people that I kind of looked up to as mentors and seemed like they knew what they were talking about. And he came to me and said, you know what, there's a storm brewing in the markets, especially in the US. You might want to get out. And maybe you might want to buy some silver. And it was a totally foreign concept to me. All I knew up to that point was dollar cost averaging. You know, I was putting away a few $100s a month into mutual funds, that sort of thing. So I went to my advisor at the time and I said, here's what I'm hearing. What do you think? And her response to that was, no, you're in the best place you could possibly be. Just sit tight. And so I did, and learned a hard lesson. It was a bit of a wake up call. Thankfully, my wife and I, we only lost about a quarter of what we had saved up to that point, but it was still substantial. And it was an eye opener that clearly people around me saw things that I didn't see and knew things that I didn't know, and that I needed to learn more. Checked my ego a little bit, and started learning a lot about uh, financial economics, history, wealth cycles, all those kinds of things. And that's what I've been doing for the last 15 years, really, is learning from mentors and applying what I learn and helping others do the same. So it's been an interesting journey, but lots of lessons along the way.
That is awesome. So ever since you were a child, like were your parents fairly knowledgeable in investing and business type of stuff? No?
Not at all. Not at all. Yeah. So I grew up in a, lower, well, middle class home. My dad was a custom home builder, carpenter. My mom stayed at home, was a homemaker, and looked after us and kept us fed and looked after the garden and all those pieces. Really investing wise, I don't think they had much experience at all. Other than, yeah, I don't know where the idea came from to have me invest in savings bonds, but that's really the only investing advice. I do remember as a kid, my parents said, they always, I have one older brother, and he was the one that anytime he had a dollar in his hand, he was spending it. And they were always praising me because I would hold on to mine. Or if we had a choice of chocolate bars to buy, that's one childhood memory I have. We were, I think, on the ferry over to Vancouver Island, and we were both given a dollar to go to the vending machine, and he picked an arrow bar, which is just bubbles. They disappear really fast. And I bought the English toffee, the stuff you can suck on, and
Nice and
it
soft.
lasts all day. So I was always praised for being good with my money, but um, yeah, I guess I just learned from people. My first boss out of college was a fellow. He was a businessman for sure, an entrepreneur. And he took me to a Primerica investing event one evening. And that was a real mind shift for me. I learned the rule of 72. I'd never heard of it before, even though I had been investing for years already. Nobody had introduced that concept to me. And so I started learning about how money works and compound interest and all those kind of pieces. And so, yeah, I've been fascinated with how to get my money working for me, more than me working for it as much as possible. And I just love to learn. Like the more I learn, the more I realize how much more there is to learn, right?
That's
There's
true.
no end to learning.
I went I have to applaud you on that because studying wealth cycles and reading up on all that history is not sometimes it's not the most exciting read in the world. I've gone through the book, I think The Dollar Crisis, and man did I st struggle through that book. I finished it. I can't really tell you exactly how much I remember about it, but it was a tough read. So for somebody like yourself who's able to go through all that data, statistics, and the history of it, that takes a certain mindset to be focused on that.
I hear you there. Yeah, some books can be pretty dry. I think where I'm fascinated is that I'm a bit of a history buff. I love, my favorite city in Canada is Quebec City because there's actual history there. You drive through Calgary and they're tearing down the old buildings that are only 100 years old. You go to Quebec City and everything's 400 years old, and they preserve it and tell you about it. And I just love that piece of history.
Mhm.
So I like studying history, and one of the things that teaches is our topic today is wealth cycles. Is that we learn from looking at history that we go through these cycles time and time again. And so that part of it is what's fascinating to me, is that if there's one thing we can learn from history, is that we tend not to learn from history, unfortunately.
So,
Some do, but most don't.
so what would you say? Like you've done real estate, you've done commodities, you've done stocks, you've done a whole bunch of different types of investments and whatnot. What would you say is is the type of investment that you would recommend people to at least venture into because of the history, because of the cycles and all that kind of stuff.
Yep, for sure. I think, Brad always tells people this, Brad Fisher that I work with, if you ask him what his preference is, he'll tell you every time it's real estate. That's where he loves to be. That's where he's made his wealth. I like that space. Like I said, my dad was a master carpenter and I grew up around that kind of work. So I love taking an ugly duck on a good street and rehabbing it and turning it into a beautiful home. But what I've learned in the last few years, especially, is that the wealth cycle is the piece to focus on. And if you're not in a real estate wealth cycle, then maybe real estate isn't the place to be. So that's why I happen to be in precious metals now. That's the space we focus our energy on. But we also know that cycle will come to an end at some point. And then we'll be looking for the next opportunity to buy low and sell high, and then sell high and buy low again. So yeah, it's more about the cycle. And that is, as a real estate guy, you got to buy right. You make your money in real estate when you buy, really, if you're doing it correctly. So real estate around here, I'm just outside of Calgary. Bidding wars and all-time highs on real estate prices right now. So it's not a great time unless you're finding absolutely the right property.
Mhm.
It's not a great time to be in the real estate space. There's better opportunities, in my opinion, I guess. Leave it at that.
So when we're looking at, let's say we'll focus on the two cycles, the real estate cycle and the precious metal cycle. How do those two, I don't know, relate? Like, do they stagger just a bit, or and what kind of cycles are we in right now? Like, when do we expect the next boom? When do we expect the next drop on both cycles, according to your research?
Yeah, so I'm sure you're familiar with Mike Maloney. He's Robert Kiyosaki that wrote Rich Dad Poor Dad. He's his gold and silver advisor, and he just wrote a new book here this last year called The Great Gold and Silver Rush of the 21st Century. And in that book, he talks about the almost everything bubble. So he says we're in the almost everything bubble right now. Stocks are at all-time highs, real estate's at an all-time high, and bonds are also at an all-time high. And it's fairly unusual for all three of those categories to be in a bubble or at all-time highs. So his anticipation is that we're going to see a major correction in all of those. Commodities and precious metals, especially when inflation adjusted, are still at historic lows. And so in our study of history and go back through time, gold and silver have been money throughout history. A silver coin today will buy you the same thing it would have bought you in Roman times. It'll get you a chicken. A gold coin in Roman times would get you a nice toga and a belt and a pair of sandals. And today it'll get you a suit and a belt and a pair of shoes. So they hold their value, their purchasing power throughout history. And when we go through these cycles, like we're going through right now, the wealth that's out there in those other categories has to move somewhere. That's one thing. Money and wealth doesn't disappear. It just transfers. And so we're in a period of, it's known as a super cycle or a Kondratiev wave, and they happen about every 100 years.
Wow.
And the last major one that we went through is what people know as the Great Depression. And that's, people think of it as a time of unemployment and food lines and the dirty 30s and lots of struggle. But it was also a period that created more millionaires than ever before, because there were that segment of the population that anticipated, that saw the trend and got ahead of it. So if you had just 10% of your wealth at that time in precious metals and had the other 90% in real estate or the stock market, which was hugely popular in the dirty 30s and in the roaring 20s leading up to the dirty 30s. When the dust settled, if you had 10% in precious metals, you came out 2.5 times further ahead. So that's an example of that wealth transfer is the money doesn't disappear. It has to go somewhere. And so it said if you had 24 ounces of gold at that time in the 30s, you could have gone into downtown Berlin, Germany, and bought an entire city block of real estate, downtown Germany. So
Oh,
24 ounces of gold today, uh, roughly speaking, $70,000 Canadian. So I don't know where you can go and even buy a single piece of property, let alone a downtown city block. So
that's true. No, ever since I've started into buying commodities, gold and silver and whatnot, they've always said that there has to be a big correction. If they were speculating what it should be worth right now, it should be worth 16 times more or whatever times more than it currently is. And fast forward to today, you're saying the same thing. It still hasn't kind of reached up to its potential. So will it ever? I mean, it's been like
yeah, it's a great
15
question.
years.
And I get it
So
all the time.
if that's
And
the
so,
case, is it ever going to happen? Is it
yeah,
ever going to, are we ever going to see silver hit 100, $200 when it's still currently at 40, $38 or so?
yeah, yeah. No, it's a great question, and we get that quite often. And I guess the response is I I know that maybe we were a decade early. I'd be happy if I was a year early or a month early or a day early.
Mm,
I would not be very happy if I was a second too late. So yeah, we've been ahead of the curve. There's a lot of factors in the world that have kind of kicked the can down the road. So there was the global financial crisis there back in 2008, 2009, and many thought that was, maybe the end of the run. We were going to see a major correction. We did see a fairly major correction in the markets, but what nobody anticipated was the willingness of governments around the world to turn on the printing presses.
mm,
And they basically just papered over the problem. They kicked the can down the road. They created terms like quantitative easing and turned on the money printers and just more debt is really all that it is. And so they were able to kick the can down the road. Then the COVID crisis kicked in and the printing presses got turned on. But the difference this time around is that instead of the money that was created going into the big banks' hands, they sent checks to everybody's home
mm,
and paid people to be unproductive. And I think that's a big reason why we're seeing the inflation that we're seeing today. The government will tell us that inflation's 7, 8, 9% right now, but the reality is if you go to the grocery store, it's a lot more than that. Your
yeah.
grocery bill is probably doubled. Or I don't know if you've seen that. There's a video going around of a young guy that ordered his groceries on Walmart and noticed up in the corner there was a reorder all button. He hadn't ordered in a number of years, and there was a reorder all button. So the original order cost him $130, I think, if my numbers are correct. And
Mm.
so just out of curiosity, he clicked the reorder all button, and it came out over $400 for the same basket of goods. So governments have this thing they call the CPI, the Consumer Price Index, and that's what they base their inflation numbers on. But Mike Maloney labeled it the CP lie because they pull all of the everyday things out of that basket, or they manipulate the basket of goods to make the numbers look better.
Mhm.
And so real true inflation, I would say, is at least 25% these days. Gas prices, utility prices. I don't think there's anything out there really that isn't more expensive today in a big way. So
Mhm. So,
cost of living is being a real big factor right now. And that's putting a lot of pressure on everything, especially with interest rates going up now too.
that's true. So when it comes to that, what are some strategies that people can do to kind of mitigate or lessen the effect of the inflation? Because when you're talking about precious metals, it's really okay, you buy it, you hold it, but the amount of time you hold it doesn't help when it comes to inflation when it's happening like right now. So
Yeah.
what
Yeah,
would you
that's a great
recommend?
question. And that's one of the knocks that people will have against holding precious metals as well. It's not producing a return, but um, actually, since the turn of the century, since 2000, gold has actually outperformed the S&P 500, which people don't really realize. I think it's averaged 9.9%, and the S&P's done 9.5%. So in real terms, it is holding its value. It is going up in value, but like you said, you'd have to liquidate it to realize that return, right? Um, one of
But in
the
the
terms
same
that
sense,
I've heard
in the same
recent,
sense, when you're buying stocks, that
it's
unless
the
they're
same
giving you
thing.
dividends, then you're still just holding on to paper stocks until it liquidates, right? So in a sense, it's kind of the same,
Yep.
whether you're holding gold or holding stocks. But anyways, just thought I kind of mention that.
Yeah, yeah, and that's why I like to emphasize that is that it's not really much different as far as assets go. It's just a different asset class. But I think the important thing in the age that we're in the times that we're facing, I think one, if you don't hold it, do you really own it? So stocks, mutual funds, that kind of stuff is really digits on a screen somewhere. And one thing that we all learned a few years ago with the enactment of the Emergencies Act here in Canada is that everybody's bank account was prone to being frozen, which we joke in the office that we need to send Mr. Trudeau and Miss Freeland a Christmas card because they 10x'd our business by doing that. Everybody very quickly realized that what we had been saying for a decade, that our financial system is on thin ice, and your currency sitting in a bank account is at risk. People learn that lesson the hard way, unfortunately, and very quickly realize the value in having something in hand. So that's one piece of it. Another thing that you hear all the time is return on investment. Everybody's concerned about the return on their investment. I would emphasize at this point, maybe what's more important is return of your investment. Are you going to get anything back in the end? So I spoke with a lady yesterday, actually, just retired. She has a nice nest egg, not wealthy by any stretch, but she's got money set aside in the typical vehicles that Canadians use in RRSPs and mutual funds and that sort of thing. But she's scared. She doesn't have any faith that it'll be there for her to use in the coming years. So one of the things we can do, and we're doing a lot of, is that we can help people protect their RRSPs with physical metals. So instead of digits on a screen somewhere, it's physical bricks of gold and silver sitting in a Brinks vault.
Hmm.
And so that program is really popular right now because with the stock market at an all-time high, people at retirement age are not in a position to recover from a major correction.
Right. So in that scenario, people are using RSP funds and having it anchored to gold and silver.
Yeah, it's a unique program here in Canada. I think we're one of two companies that offer it, but we physically take wherever your assets are now, we move those funds into a self-directed RSP, and then we acquire physical gold and silver with it. So you're not buying the ETF, SLV, or GLD. You own physical metals. It's in your name. It's not pooled with anybody else's funds. It's your metal in your name, in a box, in a vault at Brinks. So it's tangible,
Mhm. So
and
in
that's
that
why people like it.
so in that scenario, people still gets the benefit of deferring their taxes until later.
Yeah, so you're not collapsing the RSP. You're still holding on to the RSP, so there's no tax consequence of moving from where they are to physical metals, which is really nice. That's why people like it, is because I'm not a big fan of government programs because their hand's always in your cookie jar.
Mhm.
But nearly everybody has one, and so this program is a better option, if you will. You're moving out of an asset class at an all-time high into an asset class that has potential, at historic lows, and it's a physical asset. So
So for something like that, is there a minimum buy-in or a maximum or what?
there's no minimum. There's some fees, of course, to set up the program. So we usually, if people had ten or $15,000, it might just make more sense just to cash it in, just pay the tax consequence, and then buy the metals privately, physically, have them in your own possession, rather than paying storage fees every year for them. Because it's a government program, you have to have the metals stored at Brinks. So you're paying fees. Granted, they're less than half of what most mutual funds charge, so you're saving money there, but you're still paying fees to hold it. So if it's a smaller amount, yeah, I would say just liquidate it and buy the metals yourself.
Mhm.
But for, anything beyond that, it probably makes sense.
So the recommendation here is still, if it's a smaller amount, you would still want to buy physical metal, whether it's gold or silver. Is there anything as besides gold and silver that people should look into as well, like copper or other metals, or
Yeah,
still
there's other
be stick
industrial
with gold
metals
and
out
silver?
there. I don't know. Like people ask quite often about platinum, and really platinum does all the same things that silver does at 20, 30 times the price. So
Mhm.
in my mind, silver is really one of the great opportunities in our lifetime, to be honest. The number of factors that are affecting silver right now, it boggles my mind that the price is still as low as it is.
Yeah.
So it costs uh, $25 to pull silver out of the ground, and we're able to acquire it for $38-40. So
Mhm.
um, it's practically dirt cheap. And the reason the price is so low is that the price is manipulated. The big players sell more silver paper contracts in a day
Mhm.
than physical silver is produced in a year. And that manipulation has to end at some point. I don't know when.
So if people want to go and get precious metals, gold and silver, they have X amount of money to do so. Where's the best place for people to go? Because the most common question is that where do I go to get this kind of stuff? And the
Yep.
second thing they say is, oh, must be the bank. So
Yeah,
what do
well,
you
that
think
would
about
not be the first place I'd send them.
that?
And yeah, that's a great question because I love to touch on this one. So if you walk into the bank, you're most likely going to get this one. I don't know if you can see this, but that's a Canadian maple, one of the most recognized coins on the planet. Um, Certainly recognized around the world. That's 1 ounce of pure silver. But there's a couple of interesting pieces about that. Is that one, there's a picture of the Queen or King Charles now on the back of it. And it also has a $5 face value. And so our coinage act in Canada says that's circulated currency. It's really no different than our loonies and our toonies and our $20 bills. The Queen or the King is who owns that coin. You're only the bearer of it. So should they ever decide they want it back and they were to give you $5 for it, you probably wouldn't be very happy about that because you probably paid $40, $45 today for it. Um, so that's one reason why we encourage people to hold privately minted rounds. Same 1 ounce of silver. In a barter scenario, if you're trading one or the other, you're not going to get more loaves of bread for the maple than you will for the round. They're both 1 ounce of pure silver. So we encourage people to look at private mints. We deal with the biggest, most reputable private mints on the planet, and the bulk of our business is in privately minted product. We rarely, once we educate our clients, is what our focus really is on educating people first and foremost and helping them make informed decisions. But yeah, once somebody's educated, we rarely get requests for maples.
Mhm.
And so if you were to walk into a bank, your options are likely just maples.
Right.
So I would encourage people to get a hold of a guy like me and buy private.
I see. How about the second question, which is usually, now where do I put it?
Now, where do
Bank.
I
The
put it?
bank, right?
Yeah, so my answer to that is, do you have a key to the bank? Yeah, when people say, should I put it in a safe deposit box? I would ask them. So you've probably heard of Warren Buffett's 2 rules of investing. One, never, ever, ever lose money. And two, never, ever forget rule number one. Well, Brad's tweaked that a little bit, and his rule is never, ever lose control of your money. So we talk about control. If you're buying stocks, there's a number of layers of control there that you really have no influence on. The company decides what they do with their money. They determine the production of the company, the mutual fund company that you're investing through. Those are all layers of control that you really don't have influence over. A physical metal in your hand, I control that. There's no counterparty risk there. There's nobody in between me and my investment. And so we try and minimize the layers of control as much as possible, because that puts you in the driver's seat. So when somebody asks if they should keep their money in a safe deposit box, my question is, do you have a key to the bank? Because if they close their doors, can you get your money? So yeah, our priority really is that people physically have possession or somewhere nearby if they need it. And then of course you get the question, well, that sounds risky, isn't it risky to keep money in your house? And maybe it is, maybe it isn't. People have lots of wealth in their homes all the time. They have jewelry, all those kinds of things, and it's pretty rare to get broken into. But I guess the encouragement would be to be smart. Don't put it in a Costco safe under your bed, because that's the first place somebody's going to look when they break into your house, or in the master closet. Get a bit creative. There's 100 different ways that you can store some metals. They don't take up a lot of space, and yeah, just don't put it in the real obvious place where somebody's going to take it. And don't announce around the world that, hey, I got a box of silver in my house. That's probably a bad idea too.
I see. Awesome. Well, with regards to gold and silver now, compared to other investments, like I truly believe that people should be involved with multiple different types of investments and not have everything in one thing. So what would be the second thing aside from precious metals that you would recommend?
Wow, that's a great question. I think we're moving from a period of, the world had a lot of wants, and people focused on a lot of, spending money on things that maybe don't really matter in the end. And I think we're shifting into a period where people are going to have to focus on needs. So our recommendation, our sister company is actually called King Cattle Company. We focus on healthy beef products. I think food and water are big priorities for people right now. And maybe it sounds a bit doomsday, but we just went through a period where people were locked in their homes for an indefinite amount of time. And I think it showed everybody that there's maybe they're not as well prepared as they should be for situations like that. And I think, there's potential for those kind of situations to occur again. Lots of unrest in the world these days, and lots of talk of another pandemic and that kind of thing. So I think focusing on your needs is a high priority. Make sure you've got a roof over your head. Maybe start growing your own food if you can. Plant a garden. Have food supplies on hand. Have necessities. If you're handy at all, get some tools. Because those kind of things are always in demand. We still will always need people that can fix cars and build houses and prepare food and all those kinds of things. So I would encourage people to maybe make a shift away from the wants, the toys, the nice to haves, and start focusing on the necessary to haves. That would be my first encouragement. And then, there are always opportunities in real estate if you're educated. There's always opportunities, but you gotta buy right. And I just think, the market at an all-time high is not the place to be necessarily. Maybe you're looking for a downturn to get back in.
Right. Now, at the very beginning of this interview, we indicated the fact that you're a history buff, you study the cycles and all that kind of stuff. For the common person who doesn't have the time, doesn't have that much interest in reading on all that kind of stuff, how do they how do they become more up to date with what's going on? Is there certain resources that you recommend that maybe streamline that a little bit, or what can they do?
Yeah, here's my number one recommendation that everybody do is go on YouTube and watch The Hidden Secrets of Money. It's a 10 video series. They're short half-hour videos, something like that, 20 minutes. It's a fantastic history lesson. It goes all the way back in time and talks about really money and how we got where we are today, what's going on right now, and where we're likely going in the near future. And that's where we start with all of our customers. Before we book an interview or a sit down meeting with somebody, we'll encourage them to go through that series. Husband and wife sit down and watch it together, because it's just so important, I think, to understand, first of all, how our money system works. And I don't think many people do.
Mhm.
Um, I think a lot of people think they walk into their bank with their paycheck and deposit it, and that pile of cash is sitting in the vault there for them when they need it. And that's just not how it works, unfortunately.
It's gone before you put it
Yeah, just like the South Park skit. Yeah, and it's gone.
And it's yes, that's my one of my most favorite scenes in that
Yeah,
show.
I never watched the show, but I love that clip. Yeah.
So, let's say we put you on the world stage and you have a few minutes to share with the world one message that you want everybody to remember Dan for.
Oh,
What's that
wow.
one message?
That's a great question. Um, I think the biggest lesson that I picked up over the years is one, learning never ends. So keep learning, be a lifelong learner. And the big part of that for me was to find mentors, find people that have gone before you, have done what you're looking to do, and learn from them. Be a sponge, pick their brain, treat them right. First of all, treat them as the valuable asset they are to you, but learn as much as you can. I really, I've seen the world kind of shift to this higher education, excuse me, higher education model, go to university, get a degree. And I think we're going to see a shift back to the apprentice model, learning from the craftsmen and the people that have done the work and figured things out. I think that's a invaluable skill set to have, and to be able to pass that knowledge back down is something we're going to need to do more of.
Awesome. Well, great words to live by. Thank you very much. Before I let you go, I got 5 quick rapid fire questions for you. Give me the first thing that comes to mind.
All right.
Right. Stranded on a deserted island, one food to eat for the rest of your life, no consequence.
Oh, wow. Steak.
Awesome. Spoken like a true Alberta person. First of all, you said the second thing is you guys have this beef whole production going, and now your favorite thing is steak. So no hiding that you're from Alberta.
Well, you said no consequences, so
Hollywood calls and goes, "Hey Dan, we'd love to do a biopic of you. Who would you cast to play you?"
who would I cast to play me? Holy. Matt Damon. I don't know.
Matt Damon shows up at your door and, hey buddy, I got casted to play you. Let's hang out. You go, no problem. Come on with me. I got the whole night planned out. What does that night look like to you?
Oh, wow. My favorite thing to do is sit around a fire on a nice clear night and watch the stars. So I think we'd sit around the fire and tell stories.
Awesome. Uh, whether it's Winter or Summer Olympics, you get to choose one event to win the gold medal in. What would that be?
Hmm. These are great questions. What am I going to go with? I I've got a maple leaf tattoo over my heart, and the inspiration for that was watching the '84 Summer Olympics with Alex Bowman, and so I guess I would say swimming.
Oh,
Not
wow.
that I'm a great swimmer, but I don't know. That came to mind. So
Awesome. Give me a number from 1 to 5.
5.
1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Actually, 5 here or 5 here.
You choose.
All right. So the word is garden hose.
Garden hose.
You have to use garden hose as a metaphor for success. How is
Wow.
success like a garden hose?
Well, since we're on the topic of currency, currency is like current. It flows, and so you've got to get your money flowing. Stagnant water goes bad. Standing water goes stagnant and full of bugs and moss. So currency, like money, it's got to move. So don't hoard. put it to work and get it working for you. And just like that garden hose, that'll be the channel that your currency is going to flow through. Find the right channels and get that money flowing. How's that?
I see that. Spoken like a true expert in currencies. Thank you very much. So that's how a garden hose is like success. Any final words from you? And also, what's the best way for people to get in touch?
Yeah, this has been fantastic. It's great to reconnect. I'm so glad you reached out, and I look forward to reconnecting again in person when we get the opportunity. Best way to get a hold of me, probably phone or text at 403-818-6116. Our website is solidfinancialsolutions.ca. But yeah, it's probably easier just to reach out by phone or text and get a hold of me, and we'll get started there. So
Awesome. Well, thank you very much. It's been great chatting with you, and I got a lot of questions about gold and silver in the future for you. So great to have reconnected with you. So everybody, make sure you get connected with Dan. Check out his content online. Obviously, a person who's really into the whole wealth cycles and wealth transfer and all that kind of stuff. And if you're like me and you don't really want to read up on all that history, chat with Dan here. So once again, thank you very much. He's Dan. My name is Fong. Until next time, today is the day to talk your peak potential. We'll see you later.